Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into a Saturday edition of Sunday Sideline Report on the Sports Insanity Network. I'm Mike Griffin, joined by Bill Murphy. Bill, what's going on?
Good morning, Mike. How are you today?
A little tired, but I'm all right. But we're
We got a great
recording.
day of football.
I was about to say we're about to record. We're live on a Saturday because it is Super Wild Card Weekend. By the way, I hate the term Super Wild Card Weekend because next week's not the Super Divisional Playoff round, and then it's not the Super Championship games. Just because you added a game to it does not make this super.
Then what makes it super, Mike?
I think they're going off the words just for the Super Bowl, but I think it's, be frank, it's super dumb, but that's a whole nother conversation. We're on to Wild Card Weekend. The regular season of the NFL season is over. We have our first two wild card matchups today. We have three more tomorrow, and then we got one on Monday night. The ironic thing about all of this, all of these games took place during the regular season.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So
they're all rematches from previous games during the regular season, once you think about it.
Yeah, so including a couple of divisional games, one of which will be played today. So we're in for a treat on Super Wild Card Weekend.
Are you ready for a super breakdown?
We're going to break these two games down today. I'll be back tomorrow to break down the three tomorrow and maybe talk about the one Monday night. But I mean, it's Tom Brady on Monday night. So how can I break that down? All right, so
break it down.
Let's go into the two today. As I mentioned, both rematches, regular season games. The first one is a divisional. You know what? I'm going to call it a rivalry because Seahawks-Niners was a really good rivalry when Jim Harbaugh was the coach of the Niners.
That is true.
You had the Richard Sherman on Michael Crabtree moment.
Oh, I remember that like it was yesterday.
Crabtree's a sorry receiver. Felt so bad for Aaron Andrews in that moment. But
she's like, what? What?
Yeah. So we've got Seahawks, we've got the 49ers today. This year, the Niners outscored the Seahawks 48-20 in their two meetings. Brock Purdy, in his only start against the Seahawks, remember, he came in after Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. 17 of 26, 217 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Seattle on December 15th. So let's just start with Brock Purdy, and then we could dive into the rest of this.
Sounds good.
Because Brock Purdy's been pretty good as the Niners starting quarterback.
His performance has just been very Purdy, hasn't it?
He's played pretty well.
But yeah, he has passed for 10 touchdowns while tossing 4 interceptions.
Yeah, and it feels like this offense and this offense is so dynamic because there's so many good players. Because you got Debo, who just came back last week. Brandon Ayuk's had a really good year. George Kittle's had a resurrection the past couple of weeks after having a tough start to the year. Oh, by the way, they traded for this guy named Christian McCaffrey. He's been really good too. And then you flip it over to the other side. This is the best defense in all of football.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been saying, because I've been just saying with my beloved New York Giants, I'm like saying, like, I hope we don't play San Francisco in the wild card round because I will be having a nervous breakdown during that game.
the thing I find funny is on San Francisco, because everyone wants to talk about Philly and everyone wants to talk about Dallas and Minnesota, you know, and then they'll talk about the wild card teams like the Giants. San Francisco kind of feels like, as good as they are, not as much of a role as they're on,
Mhm.
they still feel like they fly under the radar.
I can kind of agree with that because my Super Bowl prediction this year is going to be Buffalo and San Francisco. And listen, if I'm wrong, I'll take the L. But I think this team, because I remember last week I was talking to an Eagles fan when I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, and he said, we make it to the championship game, we're most likely going to lose to San Francisco. I'm like, you know what? That sounds very accurate. Because this team, now that you got Debo Samuel back, Ayuk, Kittle has been rejuvenated. You have you have Christian McCaffrey. This team is going to be, this team is stacked. But then when you flip on the defense, the best defense in the NFL right now, and Seattle better beware.
I mean, Seattle only scored 20 points in the two meetings against this defense. That was number one in yards allowed, giving up 300.6 yards per game. And they were number one in turnover differential at plus 13. But you look, Nick Bosa would be the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year in my book with what he was doing pass rush wise. Fred Warner is one of the best middle linebackers in all of football. D'Amico Ryans, quick tangent. D'Amico Ryan should be a head coach on this new wave of head coaches that's coming in. Although I wouldn't go to the Texans if I were him, just based on their track record. That's just personal opinion. But this team, you want a 38-35 game, they can play that way. You want 20-17, they can play it that way. They are the Journey song any way you want it. That is who the San Francisco 49ers are, and they're so good. So you're going to have to pick your poison if you're Seattle with how you're A, going to defend this offense, but B, what's your game plan for your Seattle? Is your game plan to have Geno be the rock he's been most of the year? Or are you going to pound Kenneth Walker, who, let's be honest, he didn't have great numbers against San Francisco in the two games, 57 total rushing yards. And this defense sacked Geno 5 times. So I'm intrigued on how Seattle's going to go about their game plan. But as we flip it over to Seattle, I think if you asked a Seahawks fan before the season, do you think they're a playoff team? I think most Seahawks fans would tell you, no.
No, I would agree with most Seahawks fans because I was thinking this year from Seattle, after they traded Russell Wilson to Denver, I'm like sitting there thinking, okay, this is gonna be somewhat of a rebuilding year when it comes to okay, quarterback, you have Geno Smith, and you're thinking that come April, they'll probably get someone in the draft, like they're gonna do that bridge year, like how when New England Brady left, then you had that bridge year with Cam Newton, and then you got Mac Jones. I thought it was gonna be the same thing here. Russell Wilson is now in Denver awaiting a new coach right now. That's a whole nother situation. And I'm thinking, okay, when they get Geno Smith, I'm thinking, okay, he'll probably be here a year. He'll be here a year, and then he'll go. And then they will get someone, and then they'll get someone, and then they'll go to the draft because they think they have the 3rd round pick. Mike, am I correct? Number 3 pick. I'm sorry, doink.
They have Denver's first, which I believe is number 3 overall.
Yeah, they have the
They also have
number.
Denver's first round pick next year.
Just a moment of silence for the Denver Broncos. Moment over. But anyway, it was a lovely moment of silence. But anyway, but now, because you have, a quarterback who is old, and you're thinking next year, are they going to stick with him, or are they going to go to the draft and get another QB? Because at number 3, there's going to be plenty of quarterbacks still available. So, but yeah, sorry, I went on a huge
No,
tangent
no,
here. But
no.
anyway,
I think it's an interesting conversation to have because not only are you picking at 3, which is a conversation they'll have during leading into the draft, but there are other ways you go. If there's a team who loves a quarterback and wants to move up, are you willing to accumulate more picks? Are you, there's so many options for the Seahawks. Could they go best player available? If it's not a quarterback, where do you go? So I'm intrigued by what Seattle could do. My thing would be if Will Anderson, the pass rusher from Alabama, were to fall to 3, just because of quarterback needy teams are going to go move up to 1 or 2, 1 and 2. Well, quarterback's going 2, it's Houston. But if Will Anderson's there at 3, Seattle can say, you know what? We can use another edge rusher. Let's go. Let's make that the play. Or again, trade down, accumulate more. I hate the term house money, but Seattle plays this game today with a lot of house money because no one thought they'd be here. And it's part of the reason why Pete Carroll, I think he's in that same conversation as a guy we'll talk about in a few minutes, and a guy we'll talk about tomorrow with Doug Peterson, Brian Dable. In Dable and Peterson are trying to change a culture of those two teams. Pete Carroll has created a culture in Seattle to
because
where
he's been here for a long time.
you
So
compete and you play hard until the clock says 0. Because this team, if they don't, this is gonna sound really stupid, but if they don't compete, they're not in this position. But they have this us against the world mentality because no one believed in Geno. No one believed in this team. And here they are. So they have an opportunity. There's no pressure on them because no one expected them to be here. So, but just some numbers off of the 2 games. Geno Smith averaged 217 and a half yards of the 2 meetings, a touchdown and interception. Tyler Lockett, 16 catches, 175 yards. So the big guys on this team step up. Lockett, Metcalf, and then Kenneth Walker, who had a really nice rookie year. But Seahawks Niners in the first game, I think that's 4:30.
yes, 4:30.
4:30. I don't think I'm going to ask you who you like because I'm going to presume it's the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to go with San Francisco on this one
Yeah.
because this is a team that, like you said, they're the number 2 seed, but they have flown severely under the radar.
Yeah,
Like, everyone's talking about Philly and Dallas.
yeah, and I know there's somebody out there saying these fools are saying the Niners are flying under the radar. I want you to think of this. Think about this for a second. They are the 2 seed, but think of the teams who get the attention. Philly gets a lot of attention. The Cowboys get a lot of attention. Tampa Bay gets a lot of attention. And the Niners are like, well, we're in a good spot. Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan, who you can honestly also make the case for coach of the year, but that's a whole nother conversation as well. Actually, I think you have 3 candidates today for coach of the year. but this is a good football team in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for this one. And
I
then
totally
the
agree with you.
nightcap tonight, we got the Jags and we got the Chargers in Jacksonville. Rematch of a game in week 3 where the Jags obliterated the Chargers 38-10. Trevor Lawrence was 28 of 39, 262 yards and 3 touchdowns. James Robinson, who is no longer in Jacksonville, had 100 yards rushing. And Zay Jones had 10 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Flip side to Justin Herbert, 25 of 45, 297 yards, a touchdown and interception. And Austin Eckler had 53 total yards. So let's take that game aside for a second. We can talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
You have 2 young studs at quarterback.
Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert.
Lawrence and Herbert. That sounds like a terrible cop show. Lawrence and Herbert.
Get the networks on the phone, Mike. We're pitching that for CBS for this fall. Lawrence and Herbert.
We can dive into that in a minute. But which quarterback would you rather have if you're starting a team?
If I'm starting a team, that's a good question. I'm going to say Trevor Lawrence, and I know that's a weird answer, but I'm going to say Trevor Lawrence because this is someone who has really just turned around. Okay, this is the one. This is the thing that. Okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Okay, Trevor Lawrence. So this is a guy who last year, everyone and their mothers were saying like, oh, the Jaguars wasted a draft pick. He's overrated. He's give him 2 more years and he'll be done. But this is a guy who really turned things around. And, and I think that is with the help, and I know this is going to be diving into a conversation I know we're going to have with Doug Peterson, because this is a guy who needed because you know what it is. And I've been saying this, and I'm going to say it again till the cows come home. And I'm sure everyone agrees with me, except that one guy who probably lives in Iowa. But anyway, Doug Peterson has really done what Urban Meyer couldn't do. He is molding Trevor Lawrence into that NFL quarterback. And you could see, if you look at him from last year and this year, big difference. Huge difference.
And I don't think it's just a Trevor Lawrence thing. I think this is a team-wide thing. Like, this team, they play with, I don't want to say it's a swagger, but they play with a confidence now that they're like, mistakes are going to happen. Doug Peterson brings in a great wealth of experience and knowledge, and I think Doug Peterson's a really good coach. I still don't understand why the Eagles fired him, but that's a whole nother conversation. So they brought in a guy in Jacksonville who could help unleash what Trevor Lawrence is, unleash what Travis Etienne is, but then they spent money, and they spent money on guys. Christian Kirk, I know everyone laughed at the contract, but if you look at Christian Kirk's numbers, pretty good. Had a really good year. Zay Jones had a nice year. Your guy, Evan Ingram, had a really nice year.
We miss you, Evan. Please come back one day.
So I like Trevor Lawrence also, but if I'm building between these two, you can't go wrong. They both have great hair, so that's
your big thing, Mike.
It's the hair. You got to deal with the flow. You got it. I would go Herbert, and I think my one difference on it. By the way, all 4 of these quarterbacks actually making their playoff debuts today. my thing on Herbert is he has stood toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes. He has stood toe to toe with the best, and at times he's gotten the better of the best. I love what he has with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, who's not playing today. I'll get into you in a second, Brandon Staley, because Eckler. I just like Herbert. Big arm. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't a big Herbert guy coming out of the draft out of Oregon. I wasn't big. He's played really well this year for the most part. So I'll go Herbert. But I don't think you can go wrong with either guy personally.
Is Herbie going to be fully loaded today?
Well, he's not going to be fully low because he's down Mike Williams today because Brandon Staley. This is the Rifkin PSA rant of the day. Brandon Staley, last week the Chargers are playing the Broncos. And you knew your seed. You were going to be the 5 seed no matter what. You couldn't go up, you couldn't go down. You decide to play your starters into the second half, which is your prerogative. Cue it up, Bobby Brown. And Mike Williams has a fracture in his back because you played him.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're down your number 2 receiver who would probably be a number 1 on most teams. If you weren't such a, I'm not saying you bench him for the whole game. I'm just saying you play him for a quarter, and then you wrap everyone in bubble wrap because you know you're playing this week. You are the Los Angeles Chargers. You are the. Here's the hot take. I think the Chargers are the team outside of the Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals. The Chargers are the team I could see making a Bengal-like run from last year. They are that team. I think they are uber talented. And they're so good in so many positions. But you went and you got Mike Williams hurt. So that's, even if you get through this game, Brandon Staley against the Jags, people are saying he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks. So he's going to miss next week's game against whoever you're going to play. So you've handcuffed yourself into this position to where people are going to question why you did what you did. So that's where I'm at on the Chargers. I think the Chargers, I just said Bengal-like run from last year because I think they're that good, Bill.
You think the Chargers can make a Bengal-like run?
I think they could. I really do. They are the one. We could talk about the Bills. We could talk about the Chiefs. We could talk about the Bengals. I think the Chargers are the team. I really do.
So do you think, let me ask you a serious question here, Mike.
All right, I'm going all Lance Storm if I could be serious for a minute.
Okay. So do you think the Los Angeles Chargers are sort of like of the AFC are sort of like the 49ers in the NFC, how we said how the 49ers are very under the radar? Would you say the same thing for the Chargers or no?
No, I think the one difference between the two, I think the Niners can fly under the radar. I don't think the Chargers fly under the radar. They're the team I kind of expect. Here's how March Madness there's a Cinderella story.
Yes.
And they're not Cinderella. I get they're 5 seed. But I think the Chargers can be that Cinderella team that gets to the AFC title game. And I don't think people should bat an eye at that because I think they are that talented. The Niners, I think I think a lot of people have a biasness towards the Eagles who are undefeated for so long. The Cowboys are the Cowboys. And, the field
Brady because he's Brady.
Like her or the Chargers, I think I think they're the fourth best team here in the AFC for this reason. Lamar's not playing for Baltimore. Tua's not playing for the Dolphins. So those teams will slide down. And I kind of like the Chargers roster more than I like the Jags roster. It's close, but I think the thing that for me gives the Chargers the edge is this defense. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Kyle Van Noy. And then I get into the secondary with guys like Derwin James and Asante Samuel. This team is really good. And I really think they
they're a
are the
good team.
team in
Don't
the
get me wrong.
AFC who can make a Bengal-like run in the playoffs.
Now, I can see that. I can see the Chargers possibly making that run because, depending on what happened to the other games, we can see next round. We could see another Mahomes versus Herbert game.
Yeah, and we, and they've seen each other twice already this year. They play each other twice every year, so that'd be interesting. And then, I mean, Herbert's in line anyway after the year to get that big contract. He's gonna get it. Him and Burrow are both gonna get big contracts. So this is the time for the Chargers when he's on this rookie deal to go out there and say, okay, we can push all these eggs in before we actually have to pay the superstar quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, who you like, Bill? You like the Jags or you like the Chargers?
I'm sorry, Mike, but I'm going to go with the Jags on this one. And I
Okay.
never thought I'd say that in a playoff game. But like I said, I like this whole team has just been reinvigorated. Like I said, with Doug Peterson and, changing Trevor Lawrence around. And I think it was when they were at 3-7, Doug Peterson said, if I have a crystal ball, we're going to make a run. And I think this team is not done yet. And listen, I think the Chargers are going to put up a really good game. Do not get me wrong. But you know what? I have this inkling that I think Jacksonville can beat Los Angeles. And if I'm crazy, if we do this next week, Mike, I will give you 100% permission online to call me insane.
Well, I mean, that's why you're part of the Insanity Network.
Well, I'm not insane, at least not according to the New York State Board of Psychiatrists. But that aside.
No, I think this is a fun game. It's interesting. Listen, the Jags run has been tremendous. And This is not a shot at the Jags. This is not a dig at anybody. No one thought the Jags would be here outside of the Jags. I'm going with the Chargers.
Okay.
If the Chargers win this game, they can get to the AFC title. If the Chargers lose this game, we're going to have some conversations about what the offseason looks like in LA, because this team is too talented to go home wild card weekend. They just are.
Let me ask you a question. You said, okay, if the Chargers win this game, you said they're going to the AFC title game. So
I think they have a real good chance of going to the AFC title.
So do you think next week they're going to beat do you think next week they're going to beat KC if it's a Chargers KC game?
I think they could beat KC. I do think they could beat KC. I think they match up pretty well with KC. I think the team I would really like to see them play, and it won't happen. I'd like to see them play Cincy. I think that would be so much fun, Burrow versus Herbert. But I don't think you can go wrong with any of the quarterback matchups next week unless somehow the Dolphins advance and it's Skylar Thompson. against all these great quarterbacks. But that's not going to happen. Spoiler alert, that's not going to happen.
So if Buffalo beats Miami tomorrow, are you going to be hiding from Nate Moser, or are you going to take your lumps?
I mean, I've already conceded, basically, to be perfectly honest. If Tua's playing, it's a different game. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. When we come back, we'll preview the Sunday games. We'll talk a little bit about the Monday night game. Check out the website, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. Check out everyone on social medias. We're on Twitter at SInsaneReal. The network's on Facebook, The Sports Insanity Network. Check out podcasts, Anchor, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the YouTube page where we record Sunday and Saturday Sideline. We have vlogs on there too. So check it all out. Let us know what you're thinking. For Bill Murphy, I'm Mike Rifkin. Thank you for listening to the Saturday Sideline Report on the Sports Insanity Network. Have a great day. Enjoy the first day of Wild Card Weekend, and namaste.
Super Wild Card Weekend. Stay safe and take care.